Hi, welcome to another edition of our Paterno Presser. Cory, Neil, Rudel. We just got finished with Joe's weekly press conference. Still no official confirmation if Bolden suffered a concussion, but Joe did say he doubts that he will be able to play against Michigan.
Yeah, they're going to put him through a couple more tests, but I'll be surprised if there's any more definitive information before the kickoff. Joe was fairly forthcoming today with it, even saying that he doubted it. But then in another breath, he later said that he's kind of hopeful, but I think it is questionable.
Yeah, so that would mean McGloin most likely would start, and McGloin, I thought, had a nice afternoon, a couple of TD passes against Minnesota.
Yeah, now Minnesota obviously is not a good defense, maybe the worst defense in the league, but for a kid to come off the bench for a real struggling team, they'd lost 2 in a row, I think was a very impressive performance by McGloin. He kind of showed you that he has confidence in himself, which he's going to need. And, I think the stage is maybe set for them to use 2 quarterbacks.
I do want to point out real quickly, I'm real excited about a story I'm going to have in Thursday's Mirror about concussions and the way doctors and scientists really evaluate players with concussions. I took the Impact pre-concussion baseline test earlier this week, so we'll have that story on Thursday. It'll be a really interesting read. All of you out there who think you saw Bolden walking off the field and he'll be okay, will really explain why once a player has a concussion, why it's difficult for him to come back. So that'll be in Thursday's Altoona Mirror. Real excited about it. And again, we've become so sensitive to concussions in this country, Neil, that when a player suffers one, it's just best to let them have that time to rest.
Right, and there was a little bit of a miscommunication, kind of an unfortunate situation that happened when Bolden came off the field. And, I asked Joe about it today, and Joe said that McQuarrie was trying to do the best thing. He said McQuarrie was trying to stop him, because, they had not seen Bolden hurt before. They didn't know how he was going to react. But in doing that, it knocked Bolden down, and that's when they were able to start to attend to him. So that's what kind of happened, at least Joe's version of it.
Now, this Michigan team, they have a quarterback that has tremendous numbers. If you really look at who they've played and who they've beaten, you don't really get a full sense of who Michigan is. Yeah, they beat Notre Dame, but Navy pounded Notre Dame. Yes, Denard Robinson has a lot of numbers. What do you really know about this Michigan team with how good they may be?
Well, I was most impressed with them, at least in a real competitive game against Iowa. Because I think Iowa is a good or very good team. Maybe not a great team. The upper level of the Big Ten this year, Joe sort of alluded to it. I mean, the league is pretty good right now. Maybe Penn State's making the league look better, but between Wisconsin and Michigan State, Iowa, and obviously Ohio State, I think you have 4 really good teams. Michigan was real competitive with Iowa, so that tells me, a lot more competitive than Penn State was, so that tells me that it's a real opponent.
Michigan's defense is not good. The pass defense is especially bad. Could we see a shootout here? Because I don't think Penn State's going to be able to stop Denard Robinson. Will Michigan be able? Could we? You picked a relatively low score. We'll get to it in a minute. To me, could this be a 40-35 kind of game?
I just don't think Penn State will approach it that way. Maybe that's what they need to play in a shootout. Joe said right after the Minnesota game that they're going to need to score a lot of points. But I think when it comes down to it, they're going to try to keep Robinson off the field, which means they're going to have to rely on some semblance of ball control. Stefan Muzlewski was one of the guests today, and they were looking to take the improvement their offensive line made in the second half against Minnesota into this game.
So we'll get to the predictions now. Michigan's favored by a few points here. It's a night game, always an exciting atmosphere. What do you got?
I picked Michigan 24-23. I think I'm kind of wondering, Penn State may not have a great win in them this year. We'll see. Do they have a moment? Do they have a moment that everybody can feel good about? That would be beating Michigan at night at home. I just don't know whether Penn State's defense is really up to it. They've really struggled with personnel. They've struggled in the red zone. They're like last in the country in red zone defense. So I'm picking Michigan 24-23.
These are 2 bad defenses, and you're typically not going to include Penn State when you say something like that. This is nowhere near a typical Penn State defense. I think it will be a relatively high-scoring game and could be a lot more. I've got Michigan 31-23, but I really wouldn't be surprised if the Wolverines come in here and roll up 40. So, all right, for Neil Rudel, I'm Cory Geiger. Thanks for tuning in.